The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 21st webinar on the Secret Doctrine. This and all subsequent webinars will be available on makara.us under the subheading Moria Federation Webinars. Sunday, August 4th, 2 weeks from today, will mark the kickoff of a new webinar series on the secret teachings of all ages. I announced it last month, but I'm pushing attendance, so hopefully you'll sign up for this series. This is an amazing compendium of esoteric knowledge, including chapters on the Gnostic and Eleusinian mysteries, Atlantis, Hermes Trismegistus, the Oracle of Delphi, and Pythagoras, to name just a few. I'm really looking forward to hosting this series. And I hope you can join us. I'll be sending out invitations, a couple between now and then. We'll do it like we do. BL will send out one about 10 days before, and then I'll send out one the day before, the morning before the day before. So that's how it will be handled. And it'll be staggered with these Secret Doctrine webinars. So those Secret Teaching webinars will be on the first Sunday, and these Secret Doctrine webinars will be on the third Sunday of every month. So this month, let's check in with HPB and Colonel Logov. Last month, we found them at Amritsar, which is up in the northern state of Srinagar in India. And it's the home of the Sikhs and their amazing golden temple. I was fortunate enough to go visit this temple, and it's every bit as amazing as it looks in these photos. This month, their Amritsar adventure continues. So if we could get a reader for this and then another reader for the next slide, it's just the two.
Okay, can we start with Asha and then go on to Karen? Go ahead, please, Asha. Asha, can you read for us? I can't hear her, so let's go on to Karen. Karen, can you read for us?
In the afternoon, we revisited the temple. Whoops.
Sorry about that.
In the afternoon, we revisited the temple to enjoy its beauties once more. We saw some hundreds of fakirs, or how do you pronounce that?
Fakirs.
Fakirs, and gosains, more or less ill-favored. Akalis, praying. Say that again.
Akalis.
Akalis, praying again, or praying. Crowds of pilgrims prostrating themselves. Lighted lamps sparkling inside the temple. Tall Punjabs moving majestically over the smooth marble pavements, and everywhere animation and life. Crowds followed us about, showing kind of civility. Garlands and sugar candies were given us at the temple, and at a shrine we wear the swords, sharp steel discs, coats of mail, and other warlike weapons of the sheep. Warrior priests are exposed to view, in charge of Akalis. I was greeted, to my surprise and joy, with a loving smile by one of the masters, who for the moment was figuring among the guardians, and who gave each of us a fresh rose with a blessing in his eyes. The touch of his fingers as he handed me the flower caused a thrill to run throughout my body, as may easily be imagined.
Now this is interesting. It's a little bit unclear as to whether this was one of HPB's masters that would occasionally just precipitate in front of them, and they just happen to have done that, you know, in this venue, or if it was one of the Sikh masters. I'm not sure which is being referred to there, but in either case. Okay, another reader, please.
Okay, Kim, can you read that for us, please?
Okay. On the 27th of the month, October, I lectured to a large audience on the Arya Samaj and Theosophical Society, and again on the 29th on the past, present, and future of India, the text of which is to be found in my book, Theosophy, Religion, and Occult Science. People who imagine the Hindus to be devoid of patriotic feeling should have seen the effect of this lecture on my huge audience. As I depicted the greatness of ancient and the fallen state of modern India, murmurs of pleasure or sighs of pain broke from them. At one moment they would be cheering and vehemently applauding, the next keeping silent, while the tears were streaming from their eyes. I was surprised and delighted, and my own feelings were so wrought upon by the sight of their silent grief that I almost broke down myself. It was one of those occasions, so frequent in our relations with the Indians, when the bonds of brotherly affection were woven between our hearts, and when we felt we were blessed in having been able to come here to live and serve amongst our spiritual kinsmen.
Thank you. Okay, well, let's continue our discussion from last month on stanza 3, verse 1. This paragraph references section B, the mother swells, expanding from within, without, like the bud of the lotus. So could we get a reader to read that paragraph starting with the letter B?
James, can you read that for us, please? How about Ishtar? Can you read that for us, please? There you go.
Yeah, sure. All this teaches the hidden science, is but the temporary reflection, the shadow of the eternal ideal, prototype in divine thought, the word eternal. Note well again, standing here, only in the sense of aeon, as lasting throughout the seemingly interminable but still limited cycle of activity, called by us Manvantara. For what is the real esoteric meaning of Manvantara, or rather a Manu Antara? It means esoterically between two Manus, of whom there are 14 in every day of Brahma. Such a day consisting of 1,000 aggregates of 4 ages, or 1,000 great ages, Mahayugas.
Mahayugas, yeah.
A Mahayuga.
A yuga is an age, a Mahayuga is a great age.
Okay.
Thank you for reading. So thoughts or questions about this? We are now firmly and definitely within the Manvantara, this period of manifestation. Nothing described here references the absolute, which we spent so much time considering and made up the concern of the proem. For instance, the term eternal ideal prototype in this paragraph is not the beingness of the immutable, but rather the highest levels of configured subjective substance, which, as HPB says, are eternal only in the context of an eon or manvantara. Also, HPB asks us to consider the fact that the limitless subjectivity that stands in a causal relation to the limitless objectivity of manifestation is itself but the, quote, temporary reflection, the shadow of the eternal ideal prototype in divine thought, which you might remember is one with the great breath and primordial motion, terms used to describe the absolute. So we're in the realm of what you could say or call temporary reflections, right? Which reaches up to the very highest levels. Okay, before we read the next section, let's take a look at a couple of online theosophical glossary definitions. First, the first one is on the Manu. If we could get a reader, this is going to inform our next paragraph. Can we get a reader for this, please?
Tia, can you read that for us, please? You're self-muted right now. Tia, I don't see. You're still self-muted. Okay, let's go to Barbara. Can you read that for us, please? Okay, I'm not hearing her. How about if I just read it?
That works.
Okay, please excuse any and all of my bad...
Sanskrit?
Yeah, Scott's not here. Manu, Sanskrit, from the verbal root man to think. In Hindu mythology, the parents of humanity, who are the entities collectively which appear first at the beginning of manifestation, and from which everything is derived. Manu is collective humanity. But Manu is not really an individuality. It is the whole of mankind. You may say that Manu is a generic name for the Petries, the progenitors of mankind who come from the lunar chain. They give birth to humanity, for having become the first men, they give birth to others by evolving their shadows, their astral selves. They not only give birth to humanity, but to animals and all other creatures. There are 14 Manus in any Manvantara, arranged in pairs, a root Manu and a seed Manu for each portion of a cycle.
That's I'm sorry, it's Vaivashvata.
Vaivashvata is the primitive root Manu of our fourth human wave. The reader must remember always that Manu is not a man but collective humanity, while our Vaivashvata was but one of the 7 minor Manus who are made to preside over the 7 races of this our planet. Each of these has to become the witness of one of the periodical and ever-recurring cataclysms by fire and water that close the cycle of every root race. And it is this Vaivashvata, the Hindu ideal embodiment called respectively,
I can't help you much there. Zisutrus.
That one, and Deucalion, Noah, and by other names, who is the allegorical man who rescued our race when nearly the whole population of one hemisphere perished by water, while the other hemisphere was awakening from its temporary obscuration. Manu is, in one sense, the third logos, in another, the spiritual man, the monad, the real and deathless spiritual ego in us, which is the direct emanation of the one life, or the absolute deity of our universe. The Manus collectively, in this sense, are the 4 higher classes of Dhyani Chohans, who were the fathers of the concealed man, the subtle inner man.
Okay, let's also take a look at the term Pymander. It comes from the Greek. So if we could get a reader for this, please.
Okay. Asha, can you read that for us, please?
Pymander, from the Greek, Pymandres, shepherd of men. I had a question about the previous one that I typed in, but I'll continue with it.
Okay, let's stop. Let's stop. Go ahead and ask it. What's your question?
I wanted to know what Petris was from the lunar chain in kindergarten language, please.
Oh, okay. The lunar Petries are, you could say, the those deities who oversee the form aspect. And then there are solar Petries, who are those deities who are concerned with the soul of the second principle. So it's like second and third aspect, those beings who oversee those two aspects. Does that make sense?
I think so. And what's the lunar chain? I'm sorry, I just mentioned a lot, but I just don't understand it.
Yeah, it's in the previous, a chain. Do you know what a chain is? A chain is a group of 7 globes, right?
Uh-huh.
And each of them, confusingly, is named after a planet to describe their quality and also their ray type. So the lunar chain was included within it our now existing moon, that was one of the planets of that, right? So and it therefore informed that chain, which was like one of the lower or more physical chains of a previous time, the previous time. We'll learn more about it as we go, but that's.
Let me read the next page then.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Pymander, from Greek Poimandres, shepherd of men, the logoic divine intelligence or thought divine, the best known of the surviving portions of the Hermetic books, the writings of Hermes Trismegistus, also a title of Hermes himself. The Egyptian Prometheus and the personified Nu, or divine light, which appears to and instructs Hermes Trismegistus, is her Hermetic work called Pymander.
By the way, Trismegistus just means thrice great. 3 times great is what that means, yeah.
Okay. Said to be an abridgment of one of the books of Thoth by a Platonist of Alexandria, remodeled in the 3rd century after Old Greek and Phoenician manuscripts by a Jewish Kabbalist, and called the Genesis of Enoch. Said also to have been disfigured by Christian Kabbalists. Pymander, as Hermes, is described as the oldest and most spiritual of the logoi of the Western continent.
Yes, it's logo. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, Piel, could you please copy the URL at the bottom of the page and paste it in the chat box so that folks can click on this and get this, or whoever's here can also copy it.
Okay, yeah, I can't click on it, but I can I can type it in.
That's what I'm suggesting.
Okay.
I pulled a reading on the Manu from a much longer entry, which appears in the online Theosophical Glossary. Really a key resource for anyone interested in doing research or just refreshing your memory about some Theosophical or Sanskrit term. For instance, you could look under lunar in this, and you would have lunar Petries, lunar chain, and you could read about that in this online glossary, right? We've been using this resource in these webinars since the beginning, but I wanted to, offer it for those of you who are interested. And this is what the main, what all the pages look like. You always have that, where it's in blue and red up there, that's the alphabet, the alphabetical description. Then you click on it and you get what then comes down below that. For instance, this is from MAN to MAR up in that top part. And you see it over there in the second line at the end there. It's just a fabulous resource. If it was in book form, it'd probably be 5,000 pages or something. I don't know, because it has amazing entrances. Okay, so it's a free resource to look into if you're interested. Okay, let's take a look at the section that references the terms Manu and Pymander. which is the next paragraph down. Could we get a reader for this, please?
Okay, let's see. Whoops. Annette, can you read that for us? I don't hear Annette. Okay, let's, Antonella, can you read that for us, please? Oops. There you go. Can you read that for us then? Thank you.
Okay, forget my Italian accent. Let us now analyze the word or name Manu. Orientalists and their dictionaries tell us that the term Manu is from the root man, to think. Hence, the thinking man. But esoterically, every Manu, as an anthropomorphized patron of his spatial cycle or round, is but the personified idea of the thought divine, as the Hermetic Pymander. Each of the Manus, therefore, being the spatial god, the creator and fashioner of all that appears during his own respective cycle of being or Manvantara. Fauxhawk runs the Manus, or the Anchoans, errands, and causes the ideal prototypes to expand from within without. This to cross gradually on a descending scale, all the planes from the noumenon to the lowest phenomenon, to bloom finally on the last into the full objectivity, the acme of illusion of the grossest matter.
Thanks, Antonella.
Thanks to you.
Thoughts or questions about this paragraph? HPB inserts this segment on the Manu because we're told it is this being that directs through the agency of Fauxhawk the appropriate embodied lives for the period during which the Manu oversees. For instance, a root race. We were told that this Vaiva Shivata Manu, wasn't it 2 root races that he oversaw? I think it was. And therefore provides the ideal form as a blueprint or an archetype for that period of time. And he was considered a minor Manu. So any thoughts, questions about this before we move on? Anyone?
Yes, hold on just one second
Okay.
here.
Yeah. Okay.
Let me see. Ishtar says, Manu, could we call this like a cosmic DNA that is carried through each Manvantara, continually evolving?
Yeah, if you expand the principle of a DNA, in other words, if you think of a spiritual DNA, then yes, even though the Manu provides the physical forms, it's the form appropriate to the indwelling spirit for that time that can give best expression to the indwelling spirit. So even though, Manu is a very first-rate principle, and they're very connected to manifestation. And so they provide the form, but it's on an archetypal level. So yeah, your analogy of a DNA is, I think, right on. In fact, there may be something like that in the higher levels, literally a form of imprinting, for instance, through the David kingdom, which are all the builders that carry the impress through the Fauxhawk to the incarnated human kingdom and for a given root race. Does that make any sense?
And then we have Diana says, I do not remember the difference between seed and root Manu.
Let's see if I do. Oh, think. You know, I can't answer that question intelligently, and I'm not going to fake it for you. Let me make that my homework and get back to you on that.
And then Ishtar says, thank you, spiritual cosmic DNA seeds. And she also says, so the problems from the lunar chain is what we have today.
Yeah, it certainly is. Yeah, yeah, that's there was a failure at that time, and that was, and the ripple effect from that happened in Atlantis. They were directly connected, and so that's sort of that lunar chain failure manifested also at Atlantean times. So yeah, and of course, you know, right now we have a world that's full of Atlantean consciousness, and it is currently rearing its head. You know, it's part of the Piscean shadow, and so yes, absolutely. Okay, anyone else? Any more thoughts about this?
That's all I see right now.
Okay, just one more definition. Let's bring Fauxhawk into focus here. Can we get a reader for this, please?
Okay. Lona, can you read that for us, please?
Yes, I can do in my Danish accent. Fauxhawk, Tibetan Mongolian, from the moon, Fo, for Buddha, Buddhi, cosmic life or vitality, bipolar cosmic vital electricity, equivalent to the light of the Logos, Daivi Prakriti, Eros, the fairy, whirlwind, etc. As the bridge between spirit and matter, Fauxhawk is the collectivity of intelligent forces through which cosmic ideation impresses itself upon principles, thus forming the various world of manifestation. In the manifested universe, it is that occult electric vital power which under the will of the creative Logos unites and brings together all forms, giving them the first impulse which becomes in time law. Fauxhawk becomes the propelling force, the active power which causes the one to become true and free. Then Fauxhawk is transformed into that force which brings together the element atoms and makes them aggregate and combine. From the Secret Doctrine 109. Fauxhawk is ever present and active from the primordial beginnings of a Manvantara to its last end, nor does it then actually pass out of existence, but become quiescent and latent, as it were, sleeping or dormant during the cosmic pralaya. A co-glossary for Perunga.
G.D. Peruker. Thank you. Yes, good. So any questions about Fauxhawk? It's an amazing subject. We touched on it in the proem somewhat. But it's, you know, it is the true messenger of the gods. It's very connected with that mercurial energy, you know, and it's what allows the transformation of energy from one plane to the next, and even from one subplane to the next. So I'm going to break protocol, folks.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
We do have a question here.
Go ahead. You be formulating that, and I'm going to go over to.
Okay. Ishtar says, I read in one of the Alice Bailey books that the problem was a sexual misuse, and that created the complete destruction of the moon chain. We have a big problem with this today, and these thought forms continue to impact mankind. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, exactly. You know, a sexual misuse is a form of closing off the higher vibration, because when the focus of an entire race moves into the sacral center, then all the connections to the higher centers become blocked. You know, because the path of becoming is for the sacral center to move to the throat center. And if through sexual misuse, you're grounded in that sacral center. And when it becomes, there's a point where when it becomes extremely active, that it actually is a service to the race or to the subrace to end the subrace. Because especially when it becomes, obviously, when it becomes extremely widespread, right? And that's what, you know, that's one way to see that. It's not a value judgment, it's an energetic reality that overemphasis on the sacral energy blocks all other forms of energy from making an impress. Okay, I've brought up here, I wanted to see seed manu, see root manu. Okay, so this also will act as a kind of a tutorial on how to use this. Nothing could be simpler. We'll go to root manu and see if we get any. There it is, right at the top. Root manu and seed manu. I'll read this. 14 manus preside over our planetary chain during its life cycle, there being 2 principal or round manus for each round. So see, these manus are also hierarchical. I gotta take a drink of water. So they're, you know, like so many other forms, they're higher, like cosmic Christ and systemic Christ and the incarnating Christ. You also have manus that you have these presiding manus that preside over an entire round, which would be multiple globes. And then you have one of the minor manus, like the Vastu, oh no, I forgot, who is just for this root race and maybe one other. Okay, so for the first of each pair appearing at the beginning of a round is called the root manu. The second appearing towards the end, before the intervening twilight or nirvana, is the seed manu, who presides over the holding of the seeds of life, I see, until the coming of the life waves at the beginning of the next round. So the root manu is part of the process of manifesting the initial root race. And then the seed manu, you can see here, he says that the root manu appears on globe A, the seed manu on the 7th globe, globe G. So it's, as I'm reading this, it's very much like a permanent atom kind of an energy that holds the development in situ until the next manifestation, which is then initiated by the root manu. So let's read on here. Root and seed manu in certain relations are spoken of as being respectively the prime cause and its accumulated final effect at the end of the round. So like bookends on the what has been gained during that round, you know, in terms of consciousness. Actually, in terms of the form aspect, the appropriate form aspect for housing the consciousness that's been achieved. Anyway, as we are now in the middle of the fourth round, there have so far been 7 principal or round manus. By reason of nature's analogical procedures, there is for each globe of a planetary chain a root manu at the beginning of its several succeeding periods of activity and a seed manu at the end of the same. Looks like they're repeating themselves as being their spiritual offspring. The names are the same as those by which the principal or round manus are known. Okay, let's see, a lot of manus. Yeah, then we get a bunch of names of these manus that must have been given to humanity by some very high beings, you know, to know these names of these manus. It's kind of extraordinary. Okay, back on point here. This is a little smaller group, so I feel like I can do things like that. So I hope that it was very useful for me. I hope it was for in answering that question about the manus.
Ishtar asks, can we get this article that we were reading? Can we have the link, please? That is what I put in the chat box already that Francis asked me to. It was the Theosophical Dictionary. That the link is in the chat box. That's what he went to. Okay?
Yeah, so go to the chat box, copy paste that link, and on your browser field, and then you'll get that same exact page that I got, and then just click under what was it, root. Yeah, if you wanted to read that article, click on root, and it's like the first article. So you know, it's actually it's much more useful to have the whole glossary and to know how to use it than to just have that article. Yeah, find it yourself. You could even do it, you know, during this, and if you have any problems, we could guide you through the process. But okay, let's move on. Any other thoughts or questions about Fauxhawk before we go on? We'll be running into this term literally hundreds of times during the Secret Doctrine. It's one of the fundamental concepts of occultism. All right, now, somewhat informed by HPB's commentary, let's reconsider this first verse of stanza 3. The last vibration of the seventh eternity thrills through infinitude. The mother swells, expanding from within, without, like the bud of a lotus. So what I discovered is somewhere along the line, I realized that we were, you know, looking in depth at HPB's commentary on this, but not then returning to the verse itself and looking at that for what it is. Because sometimes, like in a coming verse, she doesn't actually deal with what's said at all. I think it's verse 4. She doesn't even deal with the first couple of sentences of verse 4 at all. So it's important that we go back and consider it on our own. It's also, I think, really useful for our intuition to, you know, try to get a sense of what's meant by the verse without HPB as an intermediary. So, so if you have any thoughts or questions, now's the time for this verse. I'm noticing by reading the first phase of verse 2, which you can see there in the gray, the vibration sweeps along, touching with its swift wing the whole universe and the germ that dwelleth in darkness. That, now going back to verse 1, that the quote, last vibration of the seventh eternity, that's the first line, actually crosses over from Palaya to fructify the mother, which is interesting to me because we tend to think of them as really separate phases. But through that section of verse 2, you know, you have this, the last vibration of the seventh eternity thrills through infinitude, and then the vibration sweeps along, touching with its swift wing the whole universe and the germ that dwelleth in darkness, suggesting that it's part of that vibration of the seventh eternity. So, you know, it's all a great mystery, but it's interesting, that connection. This seems to identify this last vibration as the one ray of stanza 2, verses 3 and 4. Let's see here. Yeah, these. The ray had not yet flashed into the germ, and her heart had not yet opened for the one ray to enter. I think there's a connection between this ray, this being described here, and the last vibration. So that's the quote infinitude, which I have in bold there. The last, the infinitude of verse 1 is the primordial deep, described also as the virgin egg, the first stage of the new Manvantara, where, because this represents the dawn of a solar Manvantara, holds all the quiescent monads, and which, once fructified, will expand from a state of pure subjectivity outwards into graded stages of objectivity, right? And that this last vibration of the seventh eternity, in this very quixotic term, thrilling through the infinitude, seems to bring back to life that which has lied quiescent during the pralaya. So any thoughts and questions on this?
Yes, Ishtar says, it is like the ending of that Manvantara in form is collected into the infinite state of God mind, and it recedes like an incomplete plan that needs working out in physical manifestation to become perfected and therefore completed.
Well said, yeah. In fact, your use of the word seed, you know, we just read about the root and seed manu, right? And that's literally the mechanism by which what you described happens, is that seed manu holds this, all that has been gained through the pralaya, and then it is reintroduced by the succeeding root manu, right? Maybe the same manus, seed and root, if they oversee 2 globes or root races or whatever cyclic period we're talking about, or in this case, an entire planetary Manvantara, right? Or a solar Manvantara, right? Which we're kind of determining that that's what these verses are oriented towards, is our solar Manvantara. So any other thoughts about this? About the first verse? It's a beauty. You know, you get addicted to the language of the old commentary once you start getting insights into it. You know, at first it just seems like, what? And then you start gaining, when you start penetrating the language, there's a certain beauty to it that's, to my mind, just extraordinary. But I've got a lot of fourth ray, so there you have it. Okay, on to verse 2 then. The vibration sweeps along, touching with its swift wing the whole universe and the germ that dwelleth in darkness, the darkness that breathes over the slumbering waters of life. So let's look at the commentary. If we could get a reader for this first
Joe,
part.
Joe, can you read that?
Hang on just a sec. This references just the first, oh, wait a minute, references the whole thing. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Joe, can you read?
I can do that.
Thank you.
The Pythagorean monad is also said to dwell in solitude and darkness like the germ. The idea of the breath of darkness moving over the slumbering waters of life which is primordial matter with the latent spirit in it, recalls the first chapter of Genesis. Its original is the Brahminical Narayana, the mover on the waters, who is the personification of the eternal breath of the unconscious all, or Parmabra, of the Eastern occultists. The waters of life, or chaos, the female principle in symbolism, are the vacuum, to our mental sight, in which lie the latent spirit and matter. This it was that made Democritus assert, after his instructor Leucippus, that the primordial principles of all were atoms and a vacuum in the sense of space, but not of empty space, as nature abhors a vacuum, according to the Peripatetics and every ancient philosopher.
Thoughts or questions about this? The real juice is in the first half of this paragraph. It's all interesting, but HPB gives the definition of the slumbering waters of life first as primordial matter with the latent spirit in it. It's an important definition. Then as chaos, the female principle in symbolism. The important point to remember is that during this initial phase, both matter and spirit are latent and purely subjective. All is potential, as yet to be further fashioned under the direction of the creative logos through the agency of Fauxhawk. This, as opposed to the erroneous concept of total emptiness, is the occult meaning behind the Greek assertion, nature abhors a vacuum. Of course, Gary Larson had his own ideas on the subject. The woods were dark and foreboding, and Alice sensed that sinister eyes were watching her every step. Worst of all, she knew that nature abhorred a vacuum. So, this is one of my favorite of all time cartoons. Couldn't help myself. There is a...
Okay.
Yes.
I'm sorry, you have a comment, but you want to finish your thought?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Ishtar says, can we assume that those other constellations are part of their old problem, i.e. the Great Bear, Sirius, Pleiades? Their ray energy is what comes to us. Or are they sending only purified ray energy to help us?
No, not at all. In fact, one of the stars, which is out of alignment when you look at the handle, is actually sometimes erroneously called the star of evil because it has a disruptive force coming from it, because in itself it is still realizing the pure essence of the group of stars. So no, stars are not, there is cosmic evil and there is sources for that out in the solar system. For our second ray system, it often comes to us through a first ray source, such as the Great Bear, right? But of course, the Great Bear is also a source of great positive spiritual stimulation. You could call it the nature of deity from one point of view. Does that answer your question?
Here, let me unmute her and then, there you go. You're
Thank you very much for explaining that. That was very helpful, and I'll have a good think on that.
Okay,
Thanks,
good.
bye.
Yeah. There's some wonderful stuff in the latter half of esoteric astrology on the effect of the Great Bear. There's one diagram particularly amazing about how the Great Bear comes into our solar system. It's be worth taking a look at.
Oh, do you know what page that is?
Well, I'm good. I'm not that good.
I'll look for it. Thank you.
Yeah, I may, during somebody's reading, I'll quick grab my EA and see if I can nail it for you, but no, not offhand. It's going to be sometime in the latter half of the book, but You shouldn't have. Oh, you know, there's a list of diagrams in the front. You shouldn't have trouble finding it that way.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Okay. Any other thoughts or questions about this concept? Right.
No,
You
but
see,
very fascinating.
what's called empty space in our modern sense of emptiness, which is, you know, really physically based. It's, you know, third principle stuff that is just empty of substance and therefore is empty, you know, and that's a complete, I don't even want to call it a myth because I believe strongly in myths. It's a misconception of the nature of this feminine principle called chaos, right? Which is pure potential, right? It is nascent spirit and nascent matter before they're formed into any kind of specificity, any delineation at all. Okay. All right. There's a mysterious concept presented here. Wait a minute. Got ahead of myself. The personification, yeah, this one really knocks me out. The personification of the eternal breath of the unconscious all. Personification of the eternal breath of the unconscious all that moves over the dark waters. Described in the verse as the darkness that breathes over to the slumbering waters of life. Personifying the great breath and identifying that personification with a quote, last vibration of the seventh eternity. So in the Hindu mythology, or I should say Hindu occult knowledge, this is Narayana, this being or force that is the darkness that breathes over the waters of space, right? You know, by comparison, the Bible is a pale reflection. It just shows the richness of the occult tradition, right? So it definitely extends the reflective connection between the absolute and the Manvantara, right? We don't get a lot of information. In fact, this is really how and where they connect. It's still a total mystery, but normally we think of the absolute, or that which is of the pralaya, and then the manifested period. This is what links them, right? What informs the Manvantara from the absolute. Yeah, so it's a fructifying process, the process by which the innate spirit that is in form is brought into activity. Okay, onward. I'm going to read this since it's so short. In all cosmogonies, water plays the same important part. It is the base and source of material existence. Scientists, mistaking the word for the thing, it's an interesting idea, understood by water the definite chemical combination of oxygen and hydrogen. That's giving a specific meaning to a term used by occultists in a generic sense, and which is used in cosmogony with a metaphysical and mystical meaning. Ice is not water, neither is steam, although all three have precisely the same chemical composition. So let's take a quick look at the Theosophical Glossary's definition of water. Can we get a reader, please?
Okay, let me see. Ishtar, can you read that for us, please? And then you can ask your question afterwards.
Okay, water, a primary cosmic element with almost innumerable manifestations. Its most fundamental meaning is that of space, or akasa, the great mother of all, the feminine receptive principle over and in which broods the fire of spirit. The first principle of things according to Thales, is that right?
Yep.
And other ancient philosophers. Of course, this is not water on the material plane, but in a figurative sense for the potential fluid contained in boundless space. This was symbolized in ancient Egypt by Nep, the unrevealed god, who was represented as the serpent, the emblem of eternity, encircling a cosmic egg or water urn, with his head hovering over the waters, which he incubates with his breath. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Genesis.
Right. So Neph, is the same as Narayana, the occultist, and it's the last vibration of the seventh eternity, personified in this. That same force crossing over to fructify the new Manvantara. Were you going to ask a question, Ishtar?
Oh yeah, about the darkness of space, being that's Pakriti, I would assume, and that darkness is sort of like a separation from I guess the multiple universes, a cosmic framework that creates separation so that manifestation can occur. Something like that.
Yeah, that's good. Darkness. There's a couple of kinds of darkness, at least. The lowest kind is the darkness of being immersed in the lower quaternary, as opposed to the light of the soul. That's one way that darkness is used. That's the negative sense of darkness. But then if you read Rule 9 in Raves and Initiations, you find that darkness is what lies beyond light. It's the causal levels of light. So you could say that from our perspective, the monadic influence is the influence of darkness. However, that darkness is really just our inability to have an experience of the energy. So we call it darkness, right?
Right.
I'm sure that at some initiation, that energy is revealed. Actually, the third, I think, is the first. The third initiation is your first contact with the nature of the energy of the monad, and you get a sense of what the energy is, which is what's described in this Rule 9 I was talking about as darkness. And it's, and then on in Rule 9, I used to have it memorized. Now it's just all I can do is paraphrase. From the very, in that darkness, at the very center, there's this cold blue flame. And at the center of that flame, in Sanat Kumara basically reveals himself, the one who first appeared at the first door of initiation. I have to rememorize these because they're so incredibly beautiful. But
interesting.
It's that darkness. Now the darkness here is this, and the reason that it's called the feminine principle is because it's completely receptive. This this Narayana, what we're seeing here is Neph, is the agent that fructifies this darkness of space, which then initiates the Manvantara and all that process of becoming that follows.
Oh, interesting. I suppose we could assume that there's multiple layers of darkness, so to speak, because the soul and the monad, they're all going upwards, aren't they? They're all ascending in some way or form.
Well, sure, I mean, from our point of view, the triadal realms are dark, because we perceive them. And that's only the etheric subplanes of the cosmic physical plane. That's pretty low in the big scheme of things, at the level we're talking about, with Manvantaras, where you're talking about at least cosmic mental, as the source of this,
Oh, I see. Makes sense.
so all of those levels above there are graded darkness from our point of view, you know.
Ah.
It's like, you know, you've got a pretty good mastery of how to add single digit numbers, like 3 and 4 equals 7, you know, you're pretty good at that. And then somebody hands you a book on differential calculus and you open it up, and that's darkness, you know.
That's true.
All you see is darkness, you know, but it's not inherently dark. It's just described that way for our benefit, right?
That's a very good analogy.
Oh, good. Yeah, right. Yeah. Both of us are mathophile, or mathophobes, I should say.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. On to verse 3. Are there any other questions on verse 2? This was a very, among her shortest commentary, interestingly, because it's quite a profound verse, but this is all she has to say about it. So let's go on to verse 3, which reads, "Darkness radiates light, and light drops one solitary ray into the mother deep. The ray shoots through the virgin egg. The ray causes the eternal egg to thrill and drop the non-eternal germ, which condenses into the world egg." So one thing I want you to notice here right off the bat, even though we'll get into a real analysis of this after we go through our commentary, is all the stages that are involved here, right? There's so many processes of once removed before you actually come to the condensation of the world egg. And guess what? That's not even a physical world yet. That's just the etheric levels. So this is kind of describing, in old commentary terms, the many steps into form, right? In fact, the first and second verses are steps that precede this one. What we're getting in stanza 3 is really the nature of the process of the coming into form of a manvantara. Okay. So let's take a look at the commentary on this. Let's see, where am I here? Oh, you know what? I had some more to say about this. I wonder what was going on with that. I got ahead of myself, sorry. So we have two keywords in this second verse. The motion of Narayana, which is, you know, the last vibration of the seventh eternity, a personification of that, and darkness. You may remember from the poem that motion, the great breath, and pre-cosmic ideation are synonymous. It is the impression upon the receptive aspect called space, the mother, and the virgin egg by this motion, which verse 1 calls the last vibration. That is the fructifying agency. It is implemented by Fauxhawk, which we're told becomes the propelling force, the active power, which causes the 1 to become 2 and 3. That, I believe, is the swift wing described here. Bringing the impress of pre-cosmic ideation, darkness that breathes over the waters is the mysterious Narayana, or Kanev, a personification of the great breath and progenitor of Brahma as father, mother. Okay, so that's what I had to say about that. So I just read this, and now let's go on to the commentary on verse 3. Can we get a reader, please?
Anne, can you read that for us, please?
Yes, I will try. Yeah. The solitary ray dropping into the mother deep may be taken as meaning divine thought or intelligence, impregnating chaos. This, however, occurs on the planet of metaphysical abstraction, or rather the plane whereon that which we call a metaphysical abstraction is a reality. The virgin egg begins, in one sense, abstract eggness, or the power of becoming developed through fecundation, is eternal and forever the same, and just as the fecundation of an egg takes place before it is stopped, so the non-eternal periodical germ, which becomes later in symbolism the mundane egg, contains in itself, when it emerges from this said symbol, the promise and potency of all the universe.
Okay. Thoughts or questions about this paragraph? We're still at the highest levels of abstraction here, right? But it's manvantaric abstraction, not the absolute. The virgin egg represents unlimited potential, which HPB calls here eggness, thus suggesting that unlike an egg, it is without boundary. The solitary ray dropping into the mother deep happens through Fauxhawk at the behest of divine thought. In its eternal phase, the egg, or more properly eggness, is the power of becoming developed through fecundation. In other words, it's a potency in and of itself, and thus remains always and only formless. Pure potential. No particularity, no particular realization of that potential, just pure potential. It is an energetic matrix, more like a stargate than an egg, which facilitates movement from within, without. Then, through fecundation of the now non-eternal or periodical germ, the mundane egg emerges, which carries the, quote, promise and potency of the universe. Note the difference between the virgin egg and the mundane egg. The latter is still subjective, but carries within it the seeds of objectivity. Objectivity, not physicality. That's yet a further step. Any thoughts or questions about this idea? Okay. Next up, could we get a reader for this, please?
Yes. Tuia, can you read that? You're self-muted. Well, I don't. Tuia, are you there? You're self-muted. Can you read that for us? There you go.
I am here. And the dark part, I am on my mobile.
Yeah, right there at the
okay.
idea.
The through from there.
It's actually though. Yeah, though.
Yes, though. Though the idea per se is, of course, an abstraction, a symbolical mode of expression. It is a symbol truly, as it suggests the idea of infinity as an endless circle. It brings before the mind's eye the picture of cosmos emerging from and in boundless space, a new universe as shoreless in magnitude, if not as endless in its objective manifestation. The simile of an egg also expresses the fact, thought in occultism, that the primordial form of everything manifested, from atom to globe, from man to angel, is spheroidal, the sphere having been with all nations, the emblem of eternity and infinity, a serpent swallowing its tail. To realize the meaning, however, the sphere must be thought as seen from its center. The field of vision or of thought is like a sphere whose radii proceed from one direction and extend out into space, opening up boundless vistas all around. It is the symbolical circle of Pascal and the Kabbalists, whose center is everywhere and circumference nowhere, a conception which enters into the compound idea of this emblem.
Thank you, Tulia. So any thoughts or questions about the idea of an egg or sphere as a symbol and why it's used as a symbol?
We do have a comment from Ishtar. I think it may have been right before, but it says, promise and potency. Is this including many other worlds culminating in the next seed?
Is this including, say that last line again.
Promise,
is this including?
Promise and potency.
Yeah.
So is this, those two words, promise and potency, including many other worlds that are culminating in the next seed? Here, let me.
Well, that's all right. I got the sense of what you're talking about here.
Okay.
It depends completely on the scale of the pralaya and the ensuing manvantara, right? So between every root race, there is a pralayic period. You know, even though the globe continues to exist, but there is a pralaya where the seed manu holds that which is to come, and then that is realized in the next root race. You can take that extension to at any level. So depending on the level of the agency that holds the information, like a seed manu does, depending on the level of that is depending on what it is going to follow in the manifestations. So you said worlds, right? And it could indeed hold the blueprint or the pattern for those worlds that would be coming, providing it is at that level, that seed manu, so to speak, is at that level, that the pralaya and ensuing manvantara is talking about the manifestation of, quote, worlds, right? Does that answer your question? If not, I might not have understood you.
You're self-muted. You can unmute yourself and talk. Oh, she said yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. You know, there's also, you know, when we started this, I was just sure that these stanzas had to do with the absolute beginning of everything, you know, all manifestation, period, right? And it wasn't until just the last couple of webinars that I realized that the language was such, do you remember going through this with me? That the language was such that it was indicating a solar pralaya, not the big maha pralaya of the end and reinitiation of all existence, right? So, and that changes certain things. At that final maha pralaya, everything is dissolved into the one essence. There is nothing that is held in any form of particularity. There's no diversity, even in potential. It is all become, it's called the day be with us. We're completely homogeneous reality that is the absolute, right? But in solar pralayas, our level of progress is held by the seed Manu until that next pralaya, right? So it's different, even though pralayas are both times of complete inactivity from our point of view. They're fundamentally different in that way, right? So anyway, okay, let's get back to this. So anything else about the egg? I think it's very interesting, this idea of that you should put yourself in the center of the egg and view out as though you were the central point of your own egg. That's what's also called a ring pass knot. So you could determine that in many different ways, like your furthermost extending aura, for instance. You know, our different bodies have different auric fields that extend out from us, right? So that could be one definition of the end of our egg or our sphere, right? But when you include then our soul and its connections, then it keeps expanding outwards until you come to the realization that not is but me, you know. So the central point, which is your point of view, extends out infinitely to embrace all creation, and so does everyone else's, which is why the center is everywhere and circumference nowhere, right? All these points of views, which are whose circumference is overlaps and expands to include everyone else's, and it becomes the one great unity, right? And that's and that is a condition that is the final goal before we're brought across into pralaya, or in this case, maha pralaya. So let's see.
You
It's
have a
helpful
hand.
to shift our. Yeah, fine.
Okay. Antonella's got her hand up, so. Go ahead.
Yeah, Francis. I was, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was wondering if in this essential symbol of creation of the serpent around the egg, if we could associate Fauxhawk to either the breath coming from the serpent or to the energy coming from the center of the egg. What do you think? Or not, if we can associate Fauxhawk to in this symbol.
Well, we can, you know, we can see ourselves as in our own microcosm as this serpent that is, you could say, self-fructifying, right? Yeah. So that it is the agency of our consciousness expanding outwards. So, you know, this symbol here, where is it? This one, you know, this can be our consciousness, or no, even higher. This can be our essential self that is overseeing the what Michael calls infinitesimals, right? Which is our particular ring pass knot of our particular egg, right? And we are both, right? It's like what do you identify with? At this point, we're identifying with stages of this sphere, right? Because we definitely feel, well, I should just speak for myself. We feel our limitations of our ring pass knot in terms of influence, in terms of our place in the world, in terms of our connection with other people, right? But the truth is that there is no boundary to this egg. It's a perception. It's a boundary of perception, right? And that's even true of the solar logos, right? That its boundary of influence is, in a sense, one with its boundary of self perception, you know, which for us is the perception of God, but it is still the solar ring past not.
Yeah, and the serpent could be also the vibration of the seventh vibration of eternity in a way.
It is.
Yeah,
I
and
don't
so
think
Fauxhawk is the breath coming out from the serpent. Maybe Fauxhawk.
I like that analogy. You know, they're also entified. There's 7 Fauxhawk brothers. And the reason that they use 7 is because they have different vibrations of energy on each of either the cosmic or systemic planes, depending on, you know, how you're looking at it. But they're the messengers of the gods. So you could see this, and I can see that as the breath of the serpent, because it's that breath that fructifies the form aspect, which is the same role that Fauxhawk plays. Right?
Yeah, because what struck me in the definition we considered before, Fauxhawk comes from the Mongolian Fo, which, and then there are the words Buddha and Buddhi. But I remember from a treatise on cosmic fire that Decay says that Fauxhawk is the totality of the third aspect. So it's strange because Buddhi we associate to the second aspect, and the third aspect is so what I can understand is that Fauxhawk is Buddhi, but Hat in Sanskrit, when I studied it, H is the letter that identifies as separation from something, and T is the letter of light. So it seems that is the light coming from Buddhi, from Fo. So it could be an explanation that Fauxhawk is really this third aspect coming out from the second aspect, and is this breath of the second aspect through substance.
There's, you know, the third aspect is also, you could see the entire cosmic physical plane as the third aspect, and that these agents of that which is higher than the cosmic physical planes are the Fauxhawk agents of those higher beings are what allows the cosmic physical plane to have contact with that higher vibration. It's the connective tissue. So from that point of view, it always deals with form. It's just, you know, at what point where do you draw the line as to what is the third principle? You know, from one point of view, you know, from the idea of the soul, then, you know, it's the lower 18 subplanes, you know, and that you move out of the lower quaternary. But in fact, the influence of Fauxhawk connects the energetic connection between beingness and consciousness and the substantive world at every level, right? So substance has to be entrained by consciousness, right? And that impulse comes through Fauxhawk. That's how I see it anyway.
Yeah, very, very interesting.
Amazing, yeah.
Yeah.
Vitality is a word very particular to the third aspect. You know,
yeah, and also electricity, bipolar cosmic vital electricity, but it's bipolar. So it's really second and third aspect together, probably.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there is no electrical phenomenon without duality, because unless that polarity is energized, you don't have electricity manifesting, right? So, and of course, Fauxhawk and electrical phenomena are one.
Yeah.
It's living electricity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Antonella. I enjoyed that.
Yes. It's really a great mystery. Also, Eleanor Eric speaks about Fauxhawk and says that it's electric, or I don't remember if her or the K, electrifier plus Firebird friction together. Again, it must be from different perspectives, this mystery of the breath of the divine thought. Yeah.
Yeah. It's, because it goes the whole distance. It's the power which causes the one to become two, and two to become three, and then the three to become diversity. And so it's the connected tissue at the very highest levels.
Yeah.
And say hi to your dog. Okay.
Yes.
And
Anyone else?
yes.
Yeah.
Tuia has her hand up, and you're self-muted to it. There you go.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for this discussion. I was just thinking when you were talking with Antonella about what DK says, or is it Blavatsky who says that the Fauxhawk digs the holes into space? And when I was looking the symbolism of the serpent, if you think that you are inside the serpent, and that is like digging these holes in the space, what we call wormholes. And that made me think about how, because in one sense, whatever travels, it has to have something what embodies it. And in one sense, we can see that serpent is symbolizing this moving consciousness. And in that sense, whenever we think about Fauxhawk, it is really difficult to define that it is the third aspect or is it the second aspect, because it looks like that it consists all of that. And maybe you were even saying that, Francis. And then I was thinking also this symbolism of egg and serpent, that as above, so below, and how the semen and the egg cell is like the opposite. That in the cosmic sense, the serpent is feminine, but in human level, the serpent, when we think the semen, it is a serpent, and then the egg cell is that, and it just made me think that what kind of symbolism in cosmic sense really the egg and the serpent is, because it consists everything already. And I think you said that already earlier, that there is everything, even though it has not traveled from that primordial or the states, the beginning states. It has not been expanded yet, but it has already everything.
Yeah. There's there's where the two come together is right here. You have the Ouroboros, which is it's the sphere. It's an alternative symbol for the sphere. And it's also the serpent energy representing the beginning and the illusion of beginning and end, and indicating that it is in fact the source. You could look, for instance, the Ouroboros you could see as the root and seed Manu, being two phases of the same Manu, right? So here, it's showing how Egypt is, the Pharaoh was the center of life of all of Egypt. That's the symbolism of this. Is that central point from which we locate our sphere of influence. Well, that here is indicated by the combination of the Pharaoh and the Ouroboros as being the source or the center of life, for ancient Egypt, at least during the time of this Pharaoh's tenure, right?
Right.
Go ahead.
Right. I was just thinking when you were talking about the breath, that in Egyptian mythology it is the Sekhmet, which is giving the first breath, the daughter of the sun. And when Antonella, you were thinking about this, what aspect it is, so that in one sense, thinking about the Leo, which is the second aspect. So in their mystery is that the Sekhmet touches the lips of the newborn human and gives the breath, and then she has 14 pearls around her neck, Sekhmet's neck, which is indicating about this 14 stages of the sun.
Right. The
So,
14 is, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And
right.
There's also, I mean, the 14 is an amazing number. There's also the 14 precious things, which are we'll get to in at some point if this webinar next, which occur through this, which are self-arising when the sea of milk is churned. That's in the next verse. But and that churning is a way of redeeming the cycle that has just passed. So this churning happens, you could say, between cycles. And then the 14 precious things, which are basically the availability of spirit through various means, is then becomes available once again.
Right. You know, that is very interesting, because this 14 is related to Venus as well. When Venus Lakshmi was born, there was 14 turns of I don't remember how it is called. There was like a devils, demons, and then the gods. They were together working. And there was a big turtle around Vasuki was put the serpent, and the both ends. And it was interesting that in their myth was that the demons had the head of Vasuki, and then the gods had the tail of the Vasuki, and they were turning the earth or this turtle 14 times, and then out came Lakshmi, which represents Venus.
And the soul of our world. So that could be, turn us around 14 times, and the outcome is, the expression of the soul of our world. One of many possibilities. Anyway, it's
right.
These are wonderful waters to swim in.
Francis.
Hey, Michael.
Hey,
Glad you.
Francis, I'm over on the other side. Look, just a couple of things. Really an excellent discussion going on here. I just want to point out that in the days when Blavatsky was writing, and I think you hinted at this, that the term universe pretty much means our solar system. Yeah. The whole galactic theory was not really being advanced nor understood. So I do think, we're dealing here very much with a planetary level, and perhaps how it fits in with the appearance and disappearance of the solar system. But then, our Earth apparently doesn't last for the duration of the entire solar system. So there's going to be a pralaya for the Earth scheme earlier than the disappearance until the next solar system of the solar logos manifestation. One other thing too, we've been debating the question of the place of Fauxhawk, and I think that term eros is very important as it appears in Greek mythology, because well, in other words, what I want to say is that each one of the major three aspects has a threefoldness to it. So there's a array 1, 2, and 3 for each one of the first three aspects. And sometimes we're talking about the magnetic, attractive, erotic, eros aspect of Fauxhawk, and sometimes we're talking about the activity of Fauxhawk, and at other times the driving force of Fauxhawk. So whatever aspect it represents, it is threefold. The very highest of the three is threefold, and the lowest is threefold. So basically, out of three, you've got 9. So it can account. It can account for these various types of expression that we notice in Fauxhawk, 3 different modes of that expression.
Yeah, thank you for that explanation. In that way, it makes me think of Agni, and you know, in that same way, the 9, the threefold, really, you know, because it's basically the personality of the cosmic logos, you know, being
Exactly.
on mental, ethical, and physical, but you know, that cosmic mental is, you know, beyond the highest first aspect that we normally consider.
That's
and,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, there's a big, you know, Agni has a lot of different modes as well, you know, quite well contained within the cosmic physical plane, and then altogether beyond it with 18 cosmic subplanes. So oftentimes Fauxhawk and Agni are identified together, which would give a very strong third aspect identification to this particular being. Anyway, you know, what do we know about this? We're searching the best we can, and it is stimulating our thought process and our intuition. I think it's great. It's going well. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Glad to have you with us. Yeah, sometimes I feel like we're ants crawling on the face of the Sphinx. You know? And hey, you know, and then we're trying to actually come up with ideas about the Sphinx, you know, as little ants. But it's still best game in town, you know. It's like
you got to do it. You got to do it. And then feeling the elephant, and then describing what is an elephant.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So we're to the commentary on the 3rd verse, which I read a minute ago. Maybe we should read it again. I think you can read that grayed out. So could we get a reader go ahead and read the verse itself, which is gray here, and then the commentary on A.
Okay, let me read that, all right? So darkness radiates light, and light drops one solitary ray into the waters, into the mother deep. The ray shoots through the virgin egg. The ray causes the eternal egg to thrill and drop the non-eternal, the periodical germ, which condenses into the world egg. The mundane egg is perhaps one of the most universally adopted symbols, highly suggestive as it is, equally in the spiritual, physiological and cosmological sense. Therefore, it is found in every world theogony, where it is largely associated with the serpent symbol, the later being everywhere in philosophy as in religious symbolism, an emblem of eternity, infinitude, regeneration, and rejuvenation, as well as of wisdom. See Part 2, Tree and Serpent in Crocodile Worship. The mystery of apparent self-generation and evolution through its own creative power, repeating in miniature the process of cosmic evolution, is the egg, both being due to heat and moisture under the efflux of the unseen creative spirit, justified fully the selection of this graphic symbol.
Thank you, Bill. So, thoughts or questions? On page 80 of the Secret Doctrine, we find a further teaching on the mundane egg that links verse 2 with the Brahma. Appearing with every Manvantara as Narayan, or as Svayambhuva, the self-existent, and penetrating into the mundane egg, it emerges from it at the end of the divine incubation as Brahma or Prajapati, progenitor of the future universe into which he expands. He is Purusha, spirit, but he is also Prakriti, matter. We'll get to this probably in a few months, but I thought it was, it helped to enlighten this verse somewhat. Okay, back to the last paragraph of commentary 3 here. We get a reader for this paragraph. Do you have any thoughts or questions on this, by the way?
I don't see any so far.
No?
Thank you. Yeah, there you go, Donna.
Go ahead.
And I lost, okay, here we go. The virgin egg is the microcosmic symbol of the macrocosmic prototype, the Virgin Mother, chaos or the primeval deep. The male creator, under what name, springs forth from the virgin female, the immaculate root fructified by the ray. Who, if versed in astronomy and natural sciences, can fail to see its suggestiveness? Cosmos as receptive nature is an egg fructified, yet left immaculate. Once regarded as boundless, it could have no other representation than a spheroid. The golden egg was surrounded by 7 natural elements, ether, fire, air, water. 4 ready, 3 secret. It may be found stated in Vishnu Purana, where elements are translated envelopes, and a secret one is added, ahamkara. See Wilson's Vishnu Purana, Book 1, page 40. The original text has no ahamkara. It mentions 7 elements without specifying the last 3. See part 2 on the mundane egg.
Okay, thoughts or questions? So, why does the Virgin Mother remain virgin after the fructifying by Narayana? Right, this is one of the great mysteries, that the idea of the Madonna, and the idea that any mother of an avatar is inherently virgin, right? It's one of the big questions. And one answer is because the primordial deep, chaos, remains unchanged. The change occurs through the outward motion that results in the mundane egg, which leaves the virgin egg as it was and has always been. This basic pattern of becoming holds true for all instances of the Virgin Mother. Let's take a look at this definition of chaos from the Theosophical Glossary. And by the way, the definition gives us further confirmation of the fact that the stanzas are framed in a solar context. Could we get a reader for this definition? This chaos, by the way, is just another name for the mother deep, the virgin egg, right? Go ahead.
Helen, can you read that for us, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. I have a throat problem.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. Julia, can you read that for us, please? I think there you go. Okay, you're self-muted now. Oh, she's gone. Michael, can you read that for us, please?
Yes, now it starts with chaos, right? And how far are we going? Down to the bottom or just one paragraph? Down to the bottom. Okay, so chaos from the Greek, from kaino to gape, or gape, yawn or open. It is the vacant and spiritual space which existed before the creation of the universe. Chaos is, quote, chaotic only in the sense that its constituents are unformed and unorganized. It is the cosmic storehouse of all the latent or resting seeds from former manvantaras. It means space, not the boundless para Brahman Mula Prakriti, but the space of any particular hierarchy descending into manifestation. In one sense, it is the condition of a solar system or planetary chain during its pralaya. I just want to point out, you know, he didn't talk so much about schemes there, but that may be DK added to it, you know, scheme, chain, and globe. But they talked about chains when they meant schemes, I think. In one sense, it is the condition of a solar system or planetary chain during its pralaya, containing all the elements in an undifferentiated state. Aether and chaos are the two principles immediately posterior to the first principle. Various terms, more or less synonymous, are Akasha, the universal egg from which Brahma issued as light, the virgin egg, the virgin mother, the immaculate root fructified by the ray, the primeval deep, the abyss, the great mother. Okay, all those synonymous apparently. The divine ray and chaos are father, mother, or cosmic fire and water. That's a good one. Chaos, theos, cosmos are the triple deity, or all in all. Chaos was personified in Egypt by the goddess Neith, who is the father-mother in the stanzas of Dzyan, the Akasha of the Hindus, the Svabhavat of the northern Buddhists, and the Icelandic Ginun Gagap. Well, we're not too far from Iceland up here. Okay, chaos ceases through the effulgence of the ray of primordial light, dissipating total darkness by the help of the great magic power of the word of the central sun. Chaos becomes male, female, and water incubated through light, and the threefold being issues as its firstborn. Wow.
Amazing. So,
Yeah.
you know, sometimes it's fruitful to reach ahead in the Secret Doctrine to get, because she tends to, or he really, tends to unfold these concepts in layers. And so this is, you know, much more detail about, you know, certain facets of what we're studying now, you know, that she finally gets to on page 231. You know, this idea of that the ray of primordial light dissipating total darkness by the help of the great magic power of the word of the central sun. It's you know, that I think is akin to that vibration of the last vibration of the seventh eternity thrilling into space. This you know, could be that same kind of initiating quality. They're also localize it, is that, as you were suggesting, as a, you know, a solar logoic arena here that we're talking about, you know. Of course, you know, the central sun, you know,
That's right. What you're going to say. Yeah.
It's not necessarily just our, you know, local neighborhood central sun.
It keeps climbing. It keeps climbing, you know. And there's always larger and larger systems in which, what do they call it? You know, the highest hierarchy, the hyparxis idea, is the head of that particular universe and is, in a way, the central sun of that particular configuration. So it just keeps going, you know, and there's always one being that is distributed throughout, magically distributed throughout its manifestation, however it occurs, whether it's one of those, you know, cosmic logoi or one about whom not to be said, and on and on and on, until we reach the top, you know.
Yeah, it's part of the fragment, you know.
Yeah.
Idea. The same thing with, you know, the cosmic Christ idea.
Yes, exactly. Mm.
Yeah. Thank you, Michael. And,
yeah, you bet.
Yeah, the you know, this idea that light is what incubates water.
Mm.
You know, it lifts it out of our normal processes that we think of and on the physical plane. Yet, in, you know, and that process on the physical plane, you know, is actually taking place invisibly through the same agency, which is, you know, light incubating water. It's just that, you know, the scientist looks through his microscope and he comes up with with volumes of terminology to describe the process. But on causal levels, this is how all firstborns come into being. You know, incubation of light through water. I mean, to just reverse the incubation of water through light.
Good point.
Tuia has got her hand up. Go ahead. I think you should be able to unmute yourself now, Tuia. There you go.
Yes, now I could. I couldn't unmute myself earlier. I tried very hard, but while you were talking, I was just thinking about the Babylonian myths of Enki and Ea, and how there it is that when the firstborn was created, and it is also having the story of that the firstborn was created from clay. But it was the Pleiades, the great grandmother Pleiades, who was giving the breath and sent forth Ea, the firstborn, who was then creating Enki. So the Ea is like Sanat Kumara or those great Kumaras, and then they are the prototypes from the firstborn to next firstborn, which is the human being.
Right, I see. Yeah, all these stages that help us to pitch our consciousness upward, you know, towards awareness of our source, you know.
Right,
Francis,
and in that sense, the central sun could be read also being the Pleiades.
Oh, absolutely.
It is for us. It is for us. Look, there's one thing that I think is an important point, and you've been dealing with it all evening, the idea of the root, the seed and the root, or the root and the seed, root and the seed, beginning and end. And always, if the pralaya is occurring within a universe, there is continuity between what has been generated and collected and what begins. And I would just like to differentiate, this is an internal universal matter. And it always works the same, and I think everybody's pointed that out very, very well, whatever the level happens to be. But, and at least this is just my theory, okay? When we're dealing with successive universes, I, for various reasons, do not think there is a seed collection for continuity, because well, you know, there are various reasons why that is an impossibility. It's a fresh new deal every time, according to the creativity of whatever it is that's super universal. It doesn't operate in the same way as an intra-universal pralaya and reassertion of the principles. It's different. And sometime to get into that, I think is really interesting about a fresh start with every universe.
Yeah, it becomes homogeneous instead of frozen in situ, which is a
good way of putting it. And besides, here's my main argument, that the whole idea is with continuity, there's always improvement. But since there's an endless series of beginningless, endless universes, every universe would have to be infinitely improved, which is an impossibility. So you see, we need a fresh start with each real emerging universe, but not within a universe. Within a universe, I think it goes just the way you've been describing.
Yeah, and the way that these stanzas are constructed addresses that limited pralaya, and there's some source, and I think the poem touched on it, where it's what's called a maha pralaya. Of course, even that can just be a bigger cycle, because this can, for instance, what if we belong to a multiverse, and a universal pralaya may just be a stage of becoming for the multiverse, but we would never know it, because from our point of view, that universe is going through a mahapralaya, total homogeneity, and yet something completely beyond anyone's ability to receive an impression from is holding something in that multiverse level, but very possibly that multiverse finally and truly, with nothing else beyond it, goes into pralaya and all becomes, as they say, the day be with us,
I think that's correct. I think that's correct.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's the problem of the many and the one. And I just always stick with this mantra, the many are the one. So there's got to be a perspective that sees the many as the one somehow. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, and it seems like a huge part of what our process is to have the experience of all those infinite perspectives, and on the one, before we're finally brought home, you could say, with all capital letters, and so we know it from without, so that we can know it fully from within. But again, we are.
Gets mysterious.
I think, again, the image of ants walking on a sphinx. But better to walk on the face of the sphinx than just down the boulevard, right? At least it's exalted material. Well, folks, we're out of time.
Yeah, go ahead, Francis.
We're looking at just a few minutes before 3, and it's, as I've said so many times, it's my greatest pleasure and privilege to host this webinar, and so much so that starting a whole new one, and where we'll be looking into other areas of occult wisdom through the eyes of Manly P. Hall, and his really astonishing tome, The Secret Teaching of All Ages. So we'll be starting with the introduction of that, which immediately goes into the history of philosophy, and you'll find that there's a lot of cross reference to the concepts that are in the Secret Doctrine. It's another part of this face of the Sphinx that we'll be crawling on, you could say, right? But it also introduced to us, over the many years that it'll take to go through this, just all types of disciplines that I think we'll find fascinating. So we'll gain new perspectives on this process of becoming. So that's in 2 weeks, and I'll be sending out invitations. I hope all of you will join us for that. So until then, I bid you adieu, and we'll see you next time. This webinar will be, I think we're right in saying it'll be on the 3rd week of July. Is that right, BL? Or Joe?
Yeah,
There's no interruption in that.
Yeah, that's when I think I have it. Well, this was the 3rd week of July. You mean the 3rd week of August? Yes, I've got it. I've got it set for the 18th of August for Secret Doctrine, and the 4th of August for the premiere of Francis Donald presenting the secret teachings of all time.
Well done, Bill. I couldn't hire an agent that could do it better than that. Okay, thank you all, and we'll until next time. Namaste.
Okay.
Goodbye, good morning, good evening, as the case may be.